While I'm trying this thing to get open, let's see if okay. Eventually, I hope it will work. Anyway, one thing that I just noticed a second ago, there is a terminology thing that says nosocomial versus iatrogenic. Okay, versus well, nosocomial versus iatrogenic, something that I wanted to address. Remember, so what is nosocomial? Acquired from the hospital. Now, iatrogenic, what's the difference then between nosocomial and iatrogenic? Okay, now let me ask you a question. So for instance, if I go into the hospital to get irradiated, okay, and as the result of radiation, my chronic cytomegalovirus infection becomes acute. Is that nosocomial or iatrogenic? Huh? So I go to the hospital. I go to the hospital because I have cancer and I need to get irradiation. So I get irradiation and my latent CMV becomes acute CMV. That infection, acute cytomegalovirus infection, is it nosocomial or iatrogenic? Iatrogenic because it's a result of a procedure. If I go to the hospital, sit on the toilet seat, and acquire urinary tract infection, nosocomial. If I go to the hospital, I'm badly burned, and I'm just lying in the bed, and eventually, somehow my wounds get infected. That's nosocomial because I get it from somewhere, from walls. Huh? It's not a procedure, yes. Does that make sense? Okay. So this is something I want to focus your attention. Okay, I'm gonna ask those questions. Nosocomial versus iatrogenic. Unapparent asymptomatic, kind of easy. So difference between primary and opportunistic, something that I also wanted to focus on. Plague, is that primary opportunistic pathogen? Plague. Primary, if you get infected, it doesn't live on you, okay? It generally, it causes the disease. Does that make sense? E. coli in your guts. Opportunistic. You see the difference? I will try to make it as clear as possible. I do my best. Zoonotic. Basic reproduction number. Basic reproduction number. What does it characterize? How infectious it is. How many people are going to acquire a disease, okay, from one infected person? Does that make sense? That's another focus. Understand the difference pathogenicity, virulence. Pathogenicity is cannot cause. Virulence, how bad the disease is. Yes. How many people one infected person can infect. Now, is it like a solid number? Is it like something like a height or a weight? No, it's a modal number, and we discussed that it depends on many factors. Okay, but if we compare something that has basic reproduction number of 20 and 2, the first one is more contagious. Okay? Susceptibility. What is susceptibility? I don't remember if we covered it like Huh? How likely you are to get infected. Resistance, how unlikely you are to get infected. Median infectious, median lethal dose. When we say median, it refers to those that 50, LD50, ID50. Portal of entry, adhesion, invasion. Understand what they are, those stages. Adhesion, invasion, immune evasion. Exoenzymes. No, you don't. I'm not going to ask you a question. Which of the following is exoenzyme? And provide you with answers like protease, hyaluronidase, coagulase. Well, they're all exoenzymes. It's going to be more about the mechanism. Does that make sense? So you don't have to memorize a load of examples. Exotoxin. Understand the difference between exo and endotoxin. Which one causes the, which one works in the small amounts, which one works in the large amounts? Okay, which one can lead to the antibody formation, which one cannot, and so on and so forth. Do you see the difference? Awesome. Well, terms, toxigenic, toxemia, toxinosis, intoxication, just know the definitions. Again, you will not get a question. What is the definition of toxemia? And then you have to write it down. But you have to recognize if it's EMI, it's in the blood. What's pyrogen? Cytokine storm. Again, I mentioned it's uncontrolled production of inflammatory mediators that leads to the hyperactivation of the immune system. Stages of disease. Self-explanatory. Seriously, I mean, when can potentially microbe replicate? At which stage? That's a tricky question. Potentially can. All of them. Does that make sense? It can replicate during, depending on the microbes. Some can replicate throughout, some can replicate pretty much during the incubations and so forth. Well, signs and symptoms mentioned. Localization. Septicemia is replication, everything else is the presence. Primary, secondary. Primary occurs first, secondary second. Latent, chronic. I'm sorry, I just found my typo. Persistent. I'm sorry, I didn't realize. Okay, so persistent infection. Latent, no symptoms, no replication. Chronic, symptoms and replication. Persistence, no symptoms, replication. Sequelae, long-term consequences. The difference between reservoir and host. It's a very thin line. What's the difference? Major difference. So if we get rid of the host, is it going to affect the microbe severely? If we get rid of the reservoir, yes. So reservoir is necessary for the maintenance of the microbe. Host, well, say for influenza, we are hosts mostly. Because if we will be gone, influenza won't be gone. It's still going to circulate through the birds and pigs. Okay. Biological versus mechanical vector. Biological requires replication. Remember, vector is the animal. Okay. Carrier is live source of infection. Okay. We usually use carrier in reference to the human. Okay. And different types of carriers, of course, they overlap. understand the idea of, do I have vehicle here? Well, it's in the next part, but fomite and vehicle. What's the difference between fomite and vehicle? Fomite is, which is live or not? Inanimate. Not only it's inanimate, it's also what? What it is. It's the object. It's the object. Vehicle, is it an object? It's a material, like water. Okay? Okay.